We survived the 2023 regular season somehow, and we've made it to the playoffs. The NFC, not too crazy. Pretty normal stuff. Packers won their game. They were in. Buccaneers managed to pull it out against the Panthers. They clinched it. The AFC, the much weirder conference. The Jaguars were the 4 seed at the start of last week, and now they are out of the playoffs. They were eliminated. They lost to the 5-11 Titans, the Tennessee Titans, who just fired the head coach that won them that game, Mike Vrabel, for some reason. And it's shaping up to be an interesting little playoffs. So because Texans won, they clinched the playoffs. They beat the Colts. The Colts were eliminated. The Texans made the playoffs. But they only had a wild card unless Jacksonville lost against the Titans. And because they did, that meant Tennessee won the AFC South. They went from sitting outside of the playoffs to winning a division. And the day before, the Steelers had won their game against the Ravens, because the Ravens were resting all their starters, because they felt, why injure anybody? Which meant, because the Jaguars were out, the Steelers got to move up. They were in. And then, the Bills and Dolphins already both had their playoff spots, but the Bills won against the Dolphins, and they had the head-to-head tiebreaker, which meant the Bills won the AFC East, and the Dolphins are now a wild card. Meanwhile, the NFC, much more normal. Cowboys won, Lions won. Eagles lost their game last week too, but since they'd already clinched their spot, didn't matter. Didn't affect them. It only would have mattered if they had won and the Cowboys had lost, because that would mean, well, the Eagles get to keep the division. But instead, dem boys get to keep the NFC East title. So, with the current format, there are 7 playoff seeds in each conference, and 4 of them are the division winners, and 3 of them are the wild cards, as discussed in the last video. The top seed, the number 1 seed in each conference, in this case the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers, get a week off. So the Ravens and Niners will get a full week of rest between now and the second round of playoffs, which is huge, especially for the Niners, who are a team who are notorious for their injury luck, especially last season when they had to resort to their 3rd string to get them there, who is now, of course, their starting quarterback, Brock Purdy. Everybody else has to play in the wild card round. The way it works is, the higher your seed, the easier path you have to the Super Bowl. The lower your seed, the harder path. Like most tournaments, like March Madness, like anything else like that. So, the 2-seed Bills play the 7-seed Steelers. The 3-seed Chiefs play the 6-seed Dolphins. And the 4-seed Texans play the 5-seed Browns. Whoever's seed is higher gets to play at home. So, this game, the Bills-Steelers game, will be in Buffalo. Chiefs-Dolphins will be at Arrowhead in Kansas City. And Texans-Browns will be in Houston. Similar thing over here. The Cowboys-Packers will be in Dallas. Lions-Rams will be in Detroit. Bucks-Eagles will be in Tampa. We got some interesting matchups. And especially, as I mentioned last week, a lot of the time, wild cards have better records than the division winners. And that is the case, in fact, for both of these games, these matchups. So let's get into it. Let's start from the top. Bills-Steelers. It does not sound like a particularly exciting game to me. The Bills have been on not a great last few weeks. They almost lost to the Los Angeles Chargers, who had fired their head coach the week before, which is embarrassing. The Steelers, meanwhile, lost their starter early in the season, Kenny Pickett. He's been back, but he refuses to play backup, even though the guy who's been backing him up, Mason Rudolph, has come alive these last few weeks, seemingly carrying them pretty far. Now, granted, in this Week 18 game against the Ravens, the Steelers just lost their key defensive player, TJ Watt, and it's unclear whether he'll be able to play in this game. That's going to significantly impact the outcome of this game. Because if they don't have TJ Watt, I really do not feel confident in that defense to be able to stop Josh Allen and be able to stop the Bills. Because the Bills are so frustrating. Because when they're on, holy shit, they are unstoppable. But when they're not, oh, it is unwatchable. You just can't. You never know which Josh Allen you're going to get. He's so inconsistent. He beat us at Arrowhead, and yet almost lost to the Chargers. There's no rhyme or reason. So it might be interesting. You might watch the beginning of that game, see which Josh Allen you're getting, and decide whether it's worth watching. Because if Josh Allen is on fine form, I don't think the Bills are going to have any problem. I don't. They fired their offensive coordinator early in the season, and they've looked much better since. Early in the season, people were thinking, are they going to miss the playoffs entirely? And now they're the 2 seed. So they've made some adjustments. They've made some changes they had to, but they still do not. I don't trust them to keep it together the whole way. But it's possible. Anything's possible. We'll see. I really don't know how to feel about this game. I will only know how to feel about it once it begins. Chiefs-Dolphins is interesting, and I'm worried for the Chiefs because we did beat the Dolphins earlier in the season, but it was only because of some ticky-tacky penalties. It was because of Tua, the quarterback for the Dolphins, really choking in the last few minutes. I really could see that game going either way because the Dolphins are real beat up. They are a beat up team. We've beaten them once when they were healthy. They just got Tyreek Hill injured. Their quarterback is looking okay this year, but still, some of their defensive pieces are missing. I don't know. I really don't know. Again, the Dolphins are another team that when they're on, they seem almost unstoppable. But our defense the Chiefs' defense has also been the thing that's kept them in games this year, which is not how it's been the last few years. The last few years, it's been Mahomes' arm winning us games. And this year, it's our run game, mostly courtesy of Isaiah Pacheco, and our defense. If our defense can hold it together and manage to stop that Dolphins attack, I think we're in good shape. But if we can't, and our offense can't deliver in turn, I don't know that there's any chance of us beating those Dolphins. I mean, we also got a full week of rest last week because we had already clinched the 3 seed. A lot of the offensive pieces did rest. So we will be coming off a week where we've been able to rest and recuperate, and the Dolphins will be coming off a week where they had a ugly, ugly loss to the Bills. So I don't know. We'll have to find out. Texans-Browns. I don't know. I just don't know. The Texans are a young team. The Texans were the second worst team in the league last year, and this year they're the 4 seed in the AFC. They had the number 2 pick in the draft last season. They drafted a young quarterback named CJ Stroud, who has almost single-handedly gotten them to the playoffs with the help of their new head coach, DeMeco Ryans. It's incredible the turnaround they've managed. I'm not entirely sure how they did it, but they did it. They are also just a young team. A lot of their pieces are very young. And I worry, we don't know. I mean, CJ Stroud has never played a playoff game. A lot of them have never played playoff games. So I am curious to see how they handle the pressure. Because the Browns, while most of them have also not been to playoff games, their quarterback, Joe Flacco, who I mentioned in the last video as having won the Super Bowl with the Ravens in 2011, does have a lot of experience in the playoffs. And he can come alive at times when you least expect him to. The Browns are a much grittier football team. With Flacco, they're a high-flying, fast-paced offense, which is also kind of how Stroud plays with the Texans. The Browns are also incredibly injured. They lost their number 1 running back in week 2 of the season. They lost their quarterback, who they traded for, who's also kind of a sexual predator, several weeks into the season. They've lost so many other pieces. We'll see, because the Texans, CJ Stroud had a concussion earlier in the season, but I think he's back. I'm not sure about, they have a receiver named Tank Dell, who CJ Stroud helped draft. I don't know what his shape is. I'm curious about this game. Obviously, Houston's got home field advantage, which is huge, but the Browns had a better regular season record than them. And I don't know who the better team is. My gut tells me it's the Browns, but my heart tells me it's the Texans, mostly because the underdog story for the Texans would be amazing. But I have a feeling that one's going to go to the Browns. I do think it'll be an exciting game, though. The NFC, Cowboys-Packers is interesting. The Cowboys have been insane this season. Very, very, very good when they're on. When they're not, they have been embarrassed. The Bills embarrassed them a few weeks ago. The 49ers embarrassed them early in the season. They barely scraped by with a win against the Dolphins a few weeks ago. We'll just have to see what version of the Cowboys we're getting. They almost lost to the Lions a few weeks ago, if not for some real bad officiating in the Cowboys-Lions game. I don't know, but their quarterback, Dak Prescott, has been playing out of his mind. He's been playing amazingly, which makes me think he might be able to do enough. But I don't know, because it's a team sport, and I just don't trust their head coach, Mike McCarthy, to make the right calls. He has had atrocious clock management, both in that Lions game and in the last 2 playoff games. They've lost to the 49ers in the playoffs by mismanaging the clock and running out of time to make a game-winning drive 2 years in a row. And I don't have confidence in Mike McCarthy to not do it a third time. I just don't. I think they could do it. I think they could make it past this round, but I'm not holding my breath, especially because the Packers started the season hot, had a major slump in the middle of the season, and then came back the last few weeks with a vengeance. They won that game against the Bears to clinch the playoffs last week. Their quarterback, Jordan Love, is the guy. I mean, people were worried about, well, we had Brett Favre, and then we immediately had Aaron Rodgers, who could possibly follow them up. And now it seems like Jordan Love has done that. He beat the Chiefs. He's been looking really solid. The Packers, however, have a lot of flaws. I will say they almost lost to the Panthers a few weeks ago, which is humiliating because the Panthers are the worst team in the league. The Packers' biggest problem is defense. Their defensive coordinator, Joe Barry, is not good at calling defense. There have been calls for him to be fired all season. Packers fans have been clamoring for him to be gone, and he definitely will not be before these playoffs are done. I just don't see that happening. So, I don't know. The Cowboys, it's an odd matchup. It's one I would not have guessed at the start of this season, and I don't really know how it's going to shake out. Both quarterbacks, very effective. Both defenses, kind of anemic. I mean, they let the Lions come back and have a chance with less than 2 minutes on the clock a few weeks ago. The Cowboys defense did. And then the Packers almost let the Panthers come back. So I don't know. It's going to be two very I feel like this might end up being a really high-scoring game just because each team's defense is so lethargic and each team's offense is so fast, so solid. So it could be fun for that reason alone. But I really don't know who's going to win this game. Next, Lions-Rams. This, of these early matchups, is the one I'm most excited for. Mostly because a few years ago, the Lions and Rams initiated a trade where they literally swapped quarterbacks. The Lions' quarterback, Matthew Stafford, and the Rams' quarterback, Jared Goff, switched places. So the Lions in this game will be starting Jared Goff, and the Rams in this game will be starting Matthew Stafford, which is very interesting to me. I'm curious to see how that shakes out. It's just an interesting story, if nothing else. The Rams are sort of the sleeper team right now, in my humble opinion. The Rams are very solid. They're not amazing, and they've lost some very winnable games, but they've also held their own against some really solid teams. They lost in overtime to the Ravens. They've held their own against the 49ers several times. I don't know. The Rams are interesting. They've got an amazing receiver this year, Puka Nacua, who was drafted in the 5th round. Nobody knew his name at the start of the season, and now he's I think top 5 receivers for receiving yards this season. He's electric, and Stafford, when he's healthy, is great. That was the biggest thing. The Rams missed the playoffs last year because Stafford got injured early. They went 5-12 after winning a Super Bowl, which is the worst a team has ever done in a season after winning a Super Bowl. But they also leveraged their future to win that Super Bowl. So I don't know. The Rams are inconsistent, and I also just don't, this is going to sound bad, I don't care about the Rams. I cared about them when they were in St. Louis. They were an interesting team when they were in St. Louis. Now that they're in LA, I can't muster any excitement about them. I can muster excitement, however, about the Lions, because the Lions just won the NFC North for the first time in at least 30 years. Since they were in the NFC Central, they are now in the NFC North. They finally won the division. They finally get home field advantage in the playoffs, which they've never had in their lives. It's going to be interesting. These Lions are electric. They are fast. They are aggressive. They will go for it on fourth down all the time, which is a blessing and a curse. When it works, they are the most exciting team in the league. They beat the Chiefs week 1, and I had to tip my hat to them. It was amazing. They just outplayed us. But it also costs them in real big ways a lot of the time. They lost to the Cowboys because, granted, the first time they didn't get the 2-point conversion, it was because of a messed up officiating moment. But it was a redo. And at that point, I don't understand why they didn't just kick the extra point and take it to overtime. Dan Campbell just refused to do that, and it cost them the game. They could have taken it to overtime, they would have had a shot, and instead he just tried to drive his head through a wall and got stopped. And I don't think that is going to reflect well, especially in the playoffs. If he wins the NFC North and then loses in the playoffs by making some boneheaded move to go for it because he wants to be macho and costs them the win, there's going to be hell to pay. People are going to be furious. And understandably so. I understand you want to feel like a big man. You want to be playing balls to the wall football, but you got to be smart. And Campbell is not smart a lot at certain moments when it is the worst moment to not be smart. So I don't know. But I think this matchup is going to be very interesting, especially because these two coaches, Dan Campbell for the Lions and Sean McVay for the Rams, are both very good. Some of the best coaches in the league right now, if you ask me. So I'm curious. Very excited for that game. And then the Monday night game is going to be Bucs-Eagles. This is also interesting for the opposite reason, in that both these teams are kind of bad. Now, you might ask, how do two bad teams make it to the playoffs? Answer? I don't know. For the Bucs, it's an easy answer. They're in the NFC South. Every other team in the NFC South has been dreadful this year. Truly, truly atrocious. The Panthers and Falcons especially. The Saints have been okay. They were one Bucs loss away from making it to the playoffs, but not good. The Bucs have been all right. They're fine. Their head coach, Todd Bowles, is very defensively minded. His defenses are great. Problem is, he just doesn't really know how to coach offense. We saw that last year when Tom Brady had his worst season of his career, the year before he retired, and we're seeing it now. Baker Mayfield is a solid quarterback, but he's not a quarterback most of the time who's going to get you out of a hole that you're in. He's a quarterback who, if you're moving and grooving, he's not going to cost you, but I don't feel like he is usually a huge playmaker except for a couple moments. He'll chuck the ball down the field, and as many times as he'll make a huge play, he'll throw an interception, which in the playoffs is not going to look good if that happens, especially playing never mind. I was going to say, especially playing the Eagles defense, but the Eagles defense has been atrocious recently. Speaking of the Eagles, the Eagles started this season 10-1. They were far and away the team to beat, and they ended the season 11-6, which is not great. They dropped 5 of their last 6 games. As soon as they lost to the 49ers, it felt like the wind was just out of their sails, because the 49ers trounced them, like seriously trounced them. And from there, the last 2 weeks they lost to the Cardinals and the Giants. The Cardinals being one of the worst teams in the league, and the Giants not being awful, but the Giants lost 40-0 to the Cowboys week 1, and they beat the Eagles to close out the season. So I'm worried about the Eagles. I don't have faith in them to be able to keep it together, especially because in this last game of the season, Jalen Hurts, their quarterback, dislocated his finger. Apparently no breaking, but still not good. Dislocated a finger in his throwing hand. That does not bode well. I could see it going either. I've been talking to Eagles fans, and a lot of them are just like, well, it's been fun. We're glad to have just made the playoffs. Yeah, one of them literally said, you can just go ahead and take us off that board. We're cooked like a Christmas turkey, is what he said. And I don't know if that's entirely true, but they also put Matt Patricia in charge of calling their defense for these last few weeks. Matt Patricia being the guy who was head coach of the Lions right before Dan Campbell, and turned them from a potential playoff contender into a laughingstock, got everyone in that organization against him, and then went to New England, where they had a young sophomore quarterback, Mac Jones, who had been okay the season before, and made him look like he didn't know how to play football as offensive coordinator. And now he's with the Eagles, calling their defense and losing them games. I don't understand how he still has a job. I don't understand how people keep falling for his shtick. I don't get it. And I feel like he might cost them this win. I really do. I don't know. I could see it going either way, but I do not think it will be an especially enjoyable game of football. I think whoever wins this game is going to immediately get bounced in the next round. That's my guess. Now, let's do the thing where I pick who's going to win every game and then get proven immediately wrong, probably. Bills Steelers, it's not even really a question for me right now. I feel like it's the Bills. I mean, the Steelers have a shot, but not much of one. The Steelers are not a very good football team this year. And I think most Steelers fans would be willing to admit that. They are beat up. Their offense has been just bad. Just bad. There's no other word for it. Just bad. I mean, they lost to the Patriots, for God's sake. The Patriots are terrible, and they lost to them. So I don't know. But I feel like they're probably going to lose this one. I think the Bills are moving on. This game, I think the Dolphins are going to win. I hate to say that, but I really do. I do not have confidence in the Chiefs to win this game. I just don't trust the Chiefs to not blow it. I don't. Our receivers are not good this year. Our offense has not looked great. Kelsey's even looked whack. Mahomes has looked whack. Our defense is great, which might be the thing that saves the game for us. But Miami's defense is also great, which makes me worried because our offense is bad. I don't think it's our year. It's just not. Which is fine. We won a Super Bowl, less than a year ago. We're good. We don't need another one right away. I'd love to see us get one, but I'm not holding my breath. This game, I hate to do it to you, CJ, but I think it's the Browns. I think the Browns are going to win. The Browns just strike me as the better football team. I'd love to be wrong, because I like the Texans more as a team, but I'd love to be proven wrong, but until I am, it's where I'm at. Now, the NFC, Cowboys, Packers. I mean, Cowboys have been hot for a while. And again, they have problems. But I really do think they've got a hell of a shot against the Packers. Lions, Rams. That's maybe the toughest one for me. They're both very good teams. They've both gotten hot in these last few weeks. But my gut just says the Lions. My gut just tells me the Lions are going to win. Bucks, Eagles. I don't care. Just gut instinct. Probably the Bucks. But again, it's just probably not going to be a very enjoyable game of football. Which means that if this plays out like this, the divisional matchups would be Ravens-Dolphins, which sounds very interesting. The Ravens beat the Dolphins a few weeks ago. I think they probably would again, but it would still, I think, be an exciting game. And Bills-Browns, which is a very, very interesting matchup to me. I don't think those teams played this season, so I'd be very curious to see what happens. In the NFC, the matchups would be Niners, Bucks. Godspeed, Tampa. I don't think you're winning that one. I'm sorry. And Cowboys, Lions. The Cowboys only barely lucked out and beat the Lions a few weeks ago, so I could see it going either way, honest to God. I would love to be wrong about any of this. I'd love to see some upsets, and we'll probably get one or two. But these are just my guesses. I'm just spitballing. Either way, hope you all enjoy Wild Card Weekend. I know I will be. I'll be watching the Chiefs on Saturday night. Enjoy the playoffs. Hope you get to watch them with some quality folks. And I'll see you next week for the divisional round.